One of the multitude said to him, "Teacher, bid my brother divide the inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or divider over you?" Let's take those words to heart. And he said to them, "Take heed, and beware of all covetousness, for a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." He's reflecting on that request. This man wants to be sure he's got his supply of possessions, and he wants to use Jesus to make sure it happens. But our Lord sees it not as a request for justice, but rather as a kind of a manifestation of covetousness. Mine, my little precious, it is mine. When we cling, we sink. And so often we can cling to all kinds of things. We might think of covetousness as being desiring millions of dollars or things like that, and that perhaps could be so. But it can be for little things. You know, there's the old saying, I forget where I read it, that in a little monastery, this monk would sell his soul for a broken cup, as long as he could have it himself. And I'm doing these days, well, it's the only New Year's resolution I think I've ever kept this long. Every day I read a little passage of the Rule of Benedict. You know, it's set up for little chunks, so you read it 3 times the course of the year, and every day has a little chunk. And I've been getting my little BlackBerry early in the morning in my prayer time, and I read a little bit, and my thumbs are very worn out now and doing a little comment on the Rule of Benedict. And what it brings to mind is that just a few days ago, there's a section about possessions in a monastery of all places where, you know, they don't have millions of dollars or anything. And he talks about everyone should get the bedding and the knives and things like that. And the abbot's supposed to check every once in a while to be sure that no monk has squirreled away some extra little thing some little treasure in his bedding, so that he can sort of, it's his own, mine, myself. Got to share. No one gets special. There's a little thing earlier, even a few days before that, where the monks are told, it says, even if parents send the monk some extra little goodie, it's to be given to the abbot, who then decides who to give it to, presumably not the one who received it. So anyway, it all comes down to that we got to let go. And whether it's of, selling our soul for $1 million or something, or for a broken teacup, it really doesn't matter. It's the same, covetousness, cling. And so he said to them, "Take heed and beware of all covetousness, for a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And maybe just let's ask God's forgiveness, and maybe try to identify, whatever it is, it's all different for you or me, what it is that we just can't let go. And we can sort of tell in Lent, because it's the things we don't want to give up. I'm not talking about sin, I mean just sort of good things that we just can't do without. So let's think about that. How much do our possessions possess us? Isn't it a shame that we're defined by a noun, and that noun is consumer? In so much of society, we are defined as people who consume. Wouldn't that be an interesting epitaph or thing on a tombstone? Here lies a consumer. You could say being consumed, but here lies a consumer. Is this what I want in my life? Isn't there more? So that's what our Lord says. Take heed and beware of all covetousness, for a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, 'I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry.'" So there's a parable. The rich man, however we apply that in our own life. And the land of the rich man brought forth plentifully. Of course, it's not really the land of the rich man. He was just entrusted with it. And it brought forth plentifully. Later on, we will hear of being a steward, not owner, but a steward. The land of a rich man brought forth plentifully, and he thought to himself, "What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops." Already the plot thickens. And he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods." Cling, 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 cling. Like that. "And I will say to my soul," I always love this. Can you ever think of saying, "I will say to my soul," "Soul? Hello, soul?" Get back in. Okay. "Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, be merry." Well, how often are we like that? We can sometimes find our circumstance fruitful, and could be in possessions. It could be in the possession that is success. That's always a dangerous thing when we are, moving upward and everything. And we can cling to that and build barns full of not grain, but just sort of prestige and success or whatever, accomplishment or whatever. And he said, "What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops." And he will said, notice he's only storing them. He's kind of hanging on to them. And we have to store crops, but I mean, store all of them? Like they just keep growing? And he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods." It's just like I was in a neighborhood once where somebody said, going by it, that every year or so, the houses are torn down and bigger ones are built, and then they tear that down and build a bigger one. Tear that down, a bigger one, Well, it's certainly good for the economy, I guess. Wasteful for everything else, but we can be like that, can't we? "I will do this. I'll pull down my barns and build larger ones, and then I will store all my grain and my goods." So he's just holding on to it. This is not sharing, it's not using, it's clinging to it. And in this way, the goods, which are after all good, they're gifts of God, they are just weighing him down. "And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years, so take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry."